You check your phone for the 11th time in 20 minutes. Nothing new. You already know there is nothing new. You checked it 90 seconds ago. But your thumb moves anyway, opens the screen, scans, finds nothing, and puts it back down. Within a minute, you will do it again. This is what boredom looks like now. A flinch, a reflex, something you medicate the instant it appears, as if it were a symptom of illness rather than a normal human state. But here is the strange part. For the overwhelming majority of human history, boredom did not exist the way you experience it today. Not because ancient life was constantly thrilling. It wasn't. It was, by modern standards, almost unbearably repetitive. The same walk to the same river, the same task of sharpening the same tools, hours spent simply watching, waiting, scanning the horizon for something that usually never came. So what did ancient humans actually do with that emptiness? And why does the answer explain almost everything about why your brain is so uncomfortable right now, in this exact moment, doing nothing? Start with what boredom actually is, not philosophically, biologically. Psychologist John Eastwood at York University has spent years defining boredom with surprising precision. His research describes it as the uncomfortable feeling of wanting to be engaged in satisfying activity but being unable to do so. Notice what that definition does not include. It does not say boredom is the absence of stimulation. It says boredom is the presence of a very specific kind of discomfort, a signal. Your brain is not simply idle when you are bored. It is actively, urgently asking for something. That distinction matters enormously because it means boredom is not a glitch. It is a function. And functions exist because they once kept you alive. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a grassland 40,000 years ago. You have already eaten. The tools are already sharpened. The fire is already built. There is nothing immediately demanding your attention. By every modern definition, you are bored. But your brain does not interpret this stillness as safe. It interprets it as a gap that in the world you evolved in was extremely dangerous to leave unfilled. An idle human was a human not gathering food for tomorrow, not scanning for predators, not strengthening alliances within the group, not exploring territory that might reveal water, prey, or threats. Stillness held too long was a liability. So evolution did something clever. It made stillness uncomfortable. It built boredom as an internal alarm, not to punish you, but to move you. Anthropologist Polly Wiessner spent decades living among the Jew/hoansi people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last hunter-gatherer societies on Earth to be extensively studied before modernization fully reached them. Her research recorded something remarkable. Despite having what looked, by Western standards, like enormous amounts of unstructured time, the Juhuanzi rarely described themselves as bored in the way modern people do. Why? Because they had somewhere for that restlessness to go. When the ancient version of boredom struck, it had exits, real, embodied, immediately available exits. You could walk further than you needed to, scouting unfamiliar ground. You could pick up a stick and start carving something with no clear purpose, which is, biologically, the earliest known form of art. You could sit beside another person and simply talk, building the social bonds your survival depended on. You could stare at the fire and let your mind wander completely unsupervised. Researchers now believe is one of the most important cognitive functions humans possess. This last one deserves attention because it directly explains your phone. Neuroscientist Mary Helen Imordino Yang has studied what happens in the brain during unstructured, undirected mental rest. Her research shows that when your mind is allowed to wander without a task, a network of brain regions called the default mode network activates. This is not your brain doing nothing. This is your brain doing something specific and essential. It is consolidating memories. It is processing unresolved emotional experiences. It is running simulations of future scenarios. It is, in a very real sense, organizing your entire psychological life while you are not paying attention. Boredom, in its ancient form, was the doorway into this state. The empty hours by the fire were not wasted time. They were processing time. Active, necessary, irreplaceable processing time. And this is exactly what modern boredom no longer leads to. When boredom strikes today, you do not walk to unfamiliar ground. You do not carve a stick. You do not sit in silence and let your mind wander. You reach for a device engineered quite deliberately to intercept that exact moment of discomfort before it can do its job. The itch of boredom appears, and within roughly 4 seconds, a screen lights up to scratch it. Researcher Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia ran a now well-known study where participants were left alone in a room with nothing to do except think, with the only alternative being the option to give themselves a mild electric shock. A striking number of participants, especially men, chose to shock themselves rather than simply sit with their own thoughts for 15 minutes. The discomfort of unfilled time was, for many people, worse than physical pain. This tells you something important about the world you are living in now. The ancient exits for boredom required effort, movement, and presence. The modern exit requires none of that. It requires a thumb and a screen. And because the modern exit is so much easier to reach, it has almost completely replaced the harder, slower exits that used to lead somewhere valuable. The result is what researchers now describe as a boredom trap. You feel the discomfort, you reach for the phone, the discomfort temporarily lifts. But the underlying need, the one boredom was originally signaling, the need for meaningful engagement, embodied movement, social connection, or genuine mental rest, goes unmet. So the restlessness returns faster than it should, and you reach again. You are not weak for doing this. You are responding exactly the way a brain calibrated for a world with effortful exits responds when given an effortless one. The ancient alarm system still works. It is the modern world that stopped offering real solutions to the alarm. Here is what the research suggests instead, and it is not what most people expect. It is not about eliminating boredom. Psychologist Sandi Mann at the University of Central Lancashire has spent years studying boredom's surprising benefits. Her research found that people who were deliberately bored before a creative task, made to do something tedious like copying numbers from a phone book, performed significantly better afterward on tests of creative thinking than people who went straight into the task. Boredom, when left unresolved by easy distraction, pushes the mind to generate its own stimulation. It is the discomfort that produces the idea, the daydream, the unexpected connection between two thoughts that would never have met otherwise. This is precisely what ancient humans were doing without knowing they were doing it. Every long, uneventful walk, every quiet evening with no task left to complete, every stretch of staring at nothing in particular. These were not gaps in a meaningful life. They were the conditions under which meaning got made. Your ancestors did not have less boredom than you. They almost certainly had more. What they had that you do not is unobstructed access to what boredom was for. So the next time that familiar itch arrives, the slight discomfort of having nothing immediately demanding you, consider what would happen if you let it sit for 60 seconds before reaching for anything at all. Not because boredom is pleasant, it rarely is, but because it might be the oldest, quietest signal your brain has, still trying after 40,000 years to tell you that something inside you is ready to wander, to wonder, to make something out of nothing at all. You just have to stop interrupting it long enough to find out what.